Hey everyone, welcome back to the Caderna podcast. I'm your host, Brian Caderna. So today we have a really interesting guest on the show, who is Ari Rastegar. Ari was recently called the Oracle of Austin by Forbes magazine and was appointed last month to the Power 100 list by Commercial Observer, which there's over 1 million applicants for that list. He's commonly cited in the Wall Street Journal and many other financial publications for his expertise in real estate, and also as a source for what will be one of the upcoming topics in the second edition of my book, Millennial Millionaire, which is population dynamics, and in particular the migration of people around the world and around the country. So who is Ari Rastegar? Ari is the founder and CEO of Rastegar Property Company, LLC, a technology-focused private equity real estate company based out of Austin, Texas. He's an entrepreneur, and he has portfolios as an investor, developer, and manager that span 38 cities and 13 states, encompassing over 5 million square feet of property. Ari leads Rastegar Property Company by building portfolios of multifamily properties and acquiring key land locations across the country. Today, we're going to talk about the migration to suburbia, some of the things that the pandemic has provoked, how Texas is booming and taking a lot of the business and population from California, and the daily life of an entrepreneur that took a $3,000 loan and grew it into one of the fastest growing real estate empires in the country. He has an upcoming book called The Gift of Failure, which you'll definitely want to check out. So without further ado, Ari Rastegar.
Is going to require work and time and sweat and toil.
If money wasn't an issue, what would I be doing?
Don't worry about it. You'll figure it out.
Change is the only constant.
The Caderna Podcast.
Ari, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely, man. I'm excited for this one because I feel like everybody loves talking about real estate. It's just one of those topics you can't get enough of.
Yeah, it's definitely an ancient business. It's been around as long as there has been humanoids. They've been trying to govern territory or own territory or at least market, whether with a stick or with something. So it's definitely lasted the test of time. And what do we do that's not real estate is what I tell people. It's like you drive on a road, you go to a hotel, you have an apartment, you go to a restaurant. Just about everything that you do involves some piece of real estate, which is kind of interesting to think about.
It is. I mean, it's truly a finite commodity that, God's not making any more planet Earth here for us, and the population just continues to grow. So it's kind of like a race to who can control more, I guess, whether it's just individuals, companies, or even countries.
Yeah, and not about, and for us, it's aside from the control is, how do we make it livable and sustainable and, peaceful, more so than anything. And because there's definitely, I read a statistic many years ago that, the entire population of the world could fit in Texas if we had the same zoning as Manhattan. Meaning, or Tokyo, or if you had skyscrapers and people lived within the proximity of New York City or Tokyo, if we changed the entire state of Texas, so meaning you would have the rest of the world with zero people. So, there's definitely room for everybody. It's just a matter of, navigating some of the, I guess, socio-political climates to make sure that that we seek equality and unity and utilize this real estate to effectuate more harmony than disharmony.
Yeah, that is really interesting because I never looked at it that way. And there is a lot of, I guess, untapped land out there that people just maybe don't consider.
No, it's just a matter of, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, the entire population of the world could fit in Texas. I mean, one state. I mean, it is a big state, but one state. So what do you do with California, New York, the rest of the United States, Canada, all of Latin America, Asia, China? Like, that means it would be completely empty of human beings.
It's crazy. It's
So
crazy to even
I'm
think
pretty
about.
sure we don't have a population problem. We might have a zoning problem or a government problem. We don't have a lack of land. That's for sure.
I like that standpoint. That's interesting. And I mean, I've only passed through Texas a few times for conferences or to see the Cowboys play. Are there skyscrapers like around Texas? Like, what would the tallest building be, in your state?
Well, right now they're building the tallest building in Dallas, 100 stories, in the uptown area, which is kind of the center of Dallas 2.0, just outside of downtown. I mean, they're kind of connected by the nexus of I-35 and Clyde Warren Park. We actually have a enormous project that we're building right there in that general vicinity. But look, Houston and Dallas are both major metropolitan city. I mean, you're talking 50, 60 story high rises all over. I mean, this is as cosmopolitan as it gets, certainly for Houston and Dallas. And Austin, where I live, is now moving in that direction. We certainly have buildings that are skyscrapers, for lack of a better word, but now we're starting to see plans and site plan submittals that are in the closer to the 100-story type range. So the city's definitely evolving dramatically. It's my hometown where I was born and raised, and obviously where our headquarters is, and we're one of the largest owners of the city. So we're definitely taking part in, in kind of what the evolution of the city is going to be, and making sure
That's
that
really
we're
cool.
doing it the right way.
That's awesome. And so you were born and raised in Texas. I wanted to ask, how did you kind of get started? Maybe in summary, from where you began to now you have kind of this mini empire of sorts that's growing very nicely.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, my dad was an Iranian immigrant. My mother's family is German. And we lived in Austin. My dad was studying at the university, at University of St. Edwards, in Austin before the Iranian Revolution, and kind of had to start from scratch. And look, I've read headlines of people saying I came from rags to riches, and these different salient topics. But look, I was born in the United States of America. I had two parents that valued reading and valued education, and they divorced when I was really young. I lived with my mom, till about fifth grade, and I lived with my father through middle school and high school, and went on to Texas A&M University before going to two community colleges, because let's just say I wasn't a very astute high school student, to say the least. But I had a dream, and I was very, very close to my grandfather and my grandmother. But my grandfather in Iran was a very prominent man. He had 7 gold medals in the Iranian national track and field games, along with being a psychiatrist, obviously medical doctor, taught at the American University in Tehran, spoke multiple languages. I mean, just an all around, grandiose figure. And I spent a lot of time with him, in his kind of final years. And he taught me to dream big and to do something meaningful. And he believed, I wanted to be a doctor like he did. And my father's an attorney, went to law school a little bit later in life, and I'm an attorney by trade myself, only because my father really didn't give me a choice. It was, he said, look, after you become a lawyer, you can be an exotic dancer for all I care, but you're going to be a lawyer first. And I ended up starting my company while in law school, but, I digress. But my grandfather, really believed in land, believed in what America could be, and that they're not making more of land. And we look at these big buildings, and I was an English major in undergrad, and I've always, really seen myself and my own identity as an artist more so than anything. Andy Warhol said that, business is the most fascinating form of art. And, so for me, when we're designing buildings, designing communities, sketching out spaces, and picking out new countertops and flooring in our renovation projects, those are the things that really excite me about, understanding, the marriage between, that sociological aspect of how millennials and Gen Z kind of think, how they want to live, where they want to live. What does that mean? How can we help build that future using technology to, really just stay obsessed with our customers and stay obsessed with our kind of our end users. And even in, when I was in high school, certainly through college, I started to notice little things that I felt like could be done better. And I didn't necessarily know how to do them, but I knew what I wanted to do and I knew why. And I let the how, kind of take its course. And, finished up, graduated top of my class from A&M, went into law school, but, I was working at Johnny Rockets, flipping burgers and, as a waiter in high school. And yeah, Johnny Rockets, an oldie but a goodie. My buddies used to come in there. I don't know if you remember, some of your listeners might be, a little bit too young, but at Johnny Rockets, you'd go and put the nickel in the little jukebox, and whichever waiter had that particular song, you'd have to sing to the ketchup bottle and, flip it upside down and do all this stuff. And somehow I had these wonderfully just exuberant friends that would love to just put nickel after nickel after nickel into the jukebox to just sing till my voice going. I'm not a very good singer by any stretch of the imagination. My 8-year-old daughter has the voice of an angel, literally. I mean, she can sing, play the piano. My wife is is great rhythm, great dancer, and I have 2 left feet. So it wasn't a pretty sight.
Yeah.
But then I delivered pizzas
cool.
through college as well, and did little odd jobs. And by then my dad was an attorney, and obviously helped me out as well when he could, kind of through that process, and got a scholarship to go to law school in San Antonio. And between college and law school, because I graduated in December, I sold cars for about 9 months to save up a little money. And in my first year of law school, I partnered with a local developer and said to him, look, I'll, buy the land myself in a, small community north of San Antonio. And he would basically teach me the trade. So I was on the build side at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, every single day, doing everything from the ground up. I mean, whatever it takes to build a house, from tying rebar to sheetrock, mechanical, even if I was just kind of shadowing, the other workers. And this is around 2005, before the subprime market, eviscerated some things. And then I just rushed to class, and thank God for Dean Cantu, who one day pulled me aside and said, what are you doing coming in, tracking dirt into the classroom every day? What are you doing every morning? And once I told him what I was doing and showed him pictures, he was very kind and generous with me and gave me a little bit of leniency to do some kind of self-paced courses and some other things to, help me follow my dreams. But it took me borrowing. Yeah, it took me borrowing a few $1,000s from my friend's dad when I was in college, using my scholarship money and every dime that I had. And when 2008 hit, it all kind of came crashing down, so to speak. But my partner, being the wonderful gentleman that he is, and very liquid, was able to keep all the properties and, keep the engine moving. And, I got my money back, paid back my investors, and went to Wall Street and, spent, many, many years on Wall Street, and decided that maybe we can do this a little better, or maybe do it a little bit different. And so moved my family. Now I'm the, proud father of 3. It's back to Texas, where I was born and raised. And the simple ethos of what Rastegar has become was, reinvent, how the real estate investment business is done, staying obsessed with your customers and your end user, and hopefully being a part of building what the future of real estate will be, married with technology and pop culture.
Gotcha. Yeah, I appreciate that. I always love seeing kind of how people started out, and I know our listeners appreciate that. So when you say you're a technology focused, real estate company, can you explain a little bit of that? Like, what is technology focused?
Yeah, well, look, you have to understand first, I'm 39 years old, and so I'm the oldest millennial.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like sit on the cusp between two generations, right? And so my generation that's very technology focused. Although fun fact about Ari is that Ari personally doesn't own a computer. I run the whole firm off of two iPhones. So I'm still very analog in some regards, but I worked at a technology firm when I was in Wall Street and have a very, very strong technology background. And so what we've done is, build proprietary technology in a variety of areas, in investor relations, and how we conduct maintenance and quality control in our units, understanding energy usage, using artificial intelligence to make better investment decisions. But it's a confluence of technologies that we use throughout the firms in various usages for different purposes. But the future of our firm and the way that we see ourselves is very much a technology company as much as a real estate company, because as the firm, as Rastegar, expands as a PE firm, it's more analogous to Blackstone than it is that to a real estate purist investment firm. Real estate will ultimately become one of the verticals, one of the many, verticals that we invest in. As kind of time goes on, we've already, made, successful investments in products, all the way to, all the way to blockchain, all the way to entertainment media, and we begin to seed our investments in a very prudent, conservative manner through our kind of R&D department to begin building the other facets that'll make up what Rastegar is going to become. Jack Welch would, stay up. They asked him, what would keep him up at night, and he said that, and God rest his soul, he passed away last year. They asked him what kept him up at night, and he said, I'd always just ask myself, what business am I in? What business should I be in? And, and I've been in the real estate business now as a professional for over 12 years in some capacity, but I should be in the technology business. And, and so we've migrated the firm to investing more into technology to just enhance that, again, back to that customer experience, whether it's our clients, our investors, our tenants, and how can we use technology to make them safer, happier, healthier, more comfortable, lower cost, without losing the human element.
Got it. And now it sounds like you wear a lot of different hats when you mention these various customers, which could be investors, they could be tenants, et cetera. How do you juggle all that? Like, when did your company really become a company that was more than just you finding a good property?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, look, being an entrepreneur and being an investor are completely different things. Being a great investor in real estate, you can be a phenomenal investor in real estate, find deals, but if you can't raise capital, or you don't understand structured finance, or if you're not able to, have a payroll or have leadership and hire great staff, they're completely different skill sets. So,
Sure.
I never really worked at a big company throughout my life. And so I kind of had to learn how to ride a bike while riding a bike. And, there was a lot of mistakes, that were made along the way, through this journey. But you're right. It is a lot to juggle, but the why of what I do is not about me. And it's something that is important enough that, we have to push through and make it happen, as we have. And as we've built an enormous business, certainly for, the time, quote unquote, that we've been doing it. I guess some of my contemporaries were, significantly larger than they were at their timeline. Although I have such a tremendous respect for them, because if it wasn't for the things that they did and my ability to be, being a voracious reader, understanding where maybe some of the missteps were, some of the enhancements are, because at the end of the day, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And, to answer your question a little bit more poignantly, I don't want to lose that startup feel, no matter how big our balance sheet gets, no matter how we grow, we want to stay nimble and agile and flexible and innovative, and keep that, that culture, that, I've worked so hard to build. I wasn't out to build a business. I was out to build a culture. And, I'm proud to say the people that work in our firm, they're obviously brilliant and are there on the merits, without question, but they want to be there. They want to be there. They want to be a part of something special and find their own niche. And when I walk through our corridors and I look at our younger staff that are, doing, moving mountains, I see future CEOs. And my job as the CEO and founder is to make sure that I'm training them and preparing them to be CEOs. Richard Branson talks about training employees so well that they could leave. But if you do your job right, they wouldn't want to leave. And, that's been something that I've really learned from. And, and it's a continued process.
There's so many awesome points that I could really dive into that you just mentioned. And I even feel that myself, as over the past 12 years, I've watched my financial advising practice grow. And as it gets bigger and bigger, it's like, that's that paradox. It's that struggle of, you're getting where you want to be, but how do you keep it, just like when you only had 3 or 5 clients, have that same quality and that same relationship there, is not easy. It's definitely not easy.
It's not easy. And look, my book comes out and we haven't set the official release date, but in September or October at the latest. It's called The Gift of Failure. And it's really about, more than anything, the failures, for lack of a better word, that I've kind of experienced in my life, but through the use of introspection and learning to be kind of comfortably uncomfortable, looking at those failures and seeing that life was really happening for me all along. Right. Mm-hmm. And, if you find that dirt that you get on you, as, my grandpa used to say, if you pray for the rain, you got to deal with the mud. And
that's a good saying.
Yeah, he said it in Farsi. I'm translating it, but but it was it kind of stuck with me. But that dirt or that mud that you kind of get on you in the process of building these things, and you're down in the trenches, or whatever cliche you want to use, what you come to find is that dirt, that mud that gets all over you, is actually like fertilizer. It's growing the seeds of what your success is going to be. I saw Steve Harvey, I have a lot of respect for, as a man, as a father, as an entrepreneur, who's endured a lot in his life. And he's a very wise man. And, he talks about this a little bit as well. But the key is failing forward, as John Maxwell explains, and, and having, that faith that there's going to be something better. And, there's a way to not lose that human element when only you have those few clients. And we built a piece of proprietary technology called transparency, which is transparency meets fairness equals transparency. Which is going to, we believe, completely disrupt investor relations on a global scale, by showing the renovations, the properties, and the things that we're doing in real time through the use of webcams, multimedia, video, pictures, interviewing with key personnel. And so that's, that's the key.
Yep. And we know you do have your book coming out here, The Gift of Failure. It was along those lines. Was there a failure that you could point to as an entrepreneur that almost pushed you out of the business, where you said, you know what, I really don't know if I want to keep doing this?
You mean the soul crushing one that you need a spatula to scrape yourself off the ground?
We've all been there. That's what I want to hear.
I've had many of them, and it actually was not in the real estate business. It was actually in the entertainment business, which, Tony Robbins, talks about how life is happening for you. I didn't know that at the time, but one of my mentors, dear friend, who's oldest son, who is basically like my adopted brother, who works for me now. A lot of my mentors, their kids all work for me now, which is, wildly, I don't know what the word is. Cool. Humbling. Well, it's humbling in a lot of ways, sure. But it's also the old school world of, the apprenticeship and passing along the family kind of trade. And it's my honor to be able to do that. But, the soul crushing one was, an entertainment company that we did with a couple major real estate kind of tycoons in 2011 when the world was still recovering. They launched in 2011 around the Super Bowl and NBA All-Star weekend. And the book covers it in detail, but long story short, Murphy's Law peaked its head and everything that could go wrong went wrong. We had the biggest ice storm that ever hit Dallas. Flights were canceled. Legionnaire's disease broke out at the Playboy Mansion. I mean, like everything that could have possibly gone wrong that was quote unquote out of our control did happen, which took something that could have been a, 8-figure, business, turned into nothing basically when it was already there. And and it was
Wow.
one of the worst kind of times in my life. But when I look back on it, I cannot tell you how much gratitude and how much love I have for that experience, even though it still haunts the shit out of me, to be perfectly honest. But my intellectual, authentic self is very, very grateful for the universe crushing me in one modality and pushing me towards my dream, which is building communities and building the future of real estate.
Yeah, making lemonade out of lemons. I love it. And one of the things about the book too, I wanted to ask is, in the first book I wrote, Millennial Millionaire, I talk a lot about networking. Now, you've said that networking is overrated. Can you explain kind of what you mean by that?
I do. Sure. What I mean by that is really the cheesy networking cocktail parties that you get 40 invitations to every week. Where, people are just getting together to get drunk. Or whatever. And there's no problem with, any of that. People do what they want to do. I have no judgment of anybody's tastes or aversions, but I was referring specifically to just these kind of boilerplate networking events where people are just kind of getting together in a room and just kind of talking without any type of system, any type of focus. And that's what I see, mostly, but, we're only good as our relationships rule the world. That's actually a chapter in one of my books. So, I believe more in education, finding strategic alliances between people you either want to model around. My greatest mentors and the greatest networking I ever did was inside of Barnes and Noble and Half Price Books. And getting to know the authors of, some of the greatest minds in the world. And to me, that networking, so to speak, was and is, where I have reaped the most benefit. So, so I think about networking. Yes, should you put yourself out there, promote yourself? Because if you don't promote yourself, certainly no one else is going to promote you. So, you definitely need to do that. But it needs to be done in a very strategic, methodical way that has integrity, because you only have so much time. And so if you're, wrapped up in going to every, Taco Tuesday, happy hour, cocktail party, whatever that, comes across your email, you're not going to have time to do the real work.
Yeah. I totally understand some of that quality over quantity. And there's only so many hours in the day to work with that. And you also mentioned a term, futuristic suburbanism, which maybe this had something to do with the pandemic or was accelerated by it.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. So maybe I got that off, but
yeah, no, you didn't.
I was just going to say, here where I'm at in Jersey, you've seen New York City just seemingly evaporate, and all of them come to our suburbs in Jersey. Anything to do with that, or what are you seeing for suburbs like in the future?
Futuristic suburbanism is a term that we've used internally and has kind of caught a little bit of fire because it's about what we spoke about. I'll give you a simple example. It'll be the future of how people live, work, how they're entertained, where they want to be entertained. And the whole confluence and ecosystem around, the day in the life of an individual, in the future, how you work, how your transportation gets you to work. Do you work from home? Where do you play? Where do you take your kids to dinner? Where do your kids go play? Where do they go to school? What do these pocket communities look like? We're building, over 4,000 homes in the Austin MSA right now. And in a few areas, we have 320 acres just south of Austin. We're building a massive master plan community. So we're starting to really think about, where these folks are going to be, where they're going to shop, where they're going to go, and using technology, using artificial intelligence to track population migration trends, and understanding traffic studies, and just really understanding where the world is going. And that is, and since COVID, people are more concerned about wellness, safety than they ever been in their lives, including health. And, I'm a huge health advocate. Anybody that knows me knows that. And I believe that there's going to be a massive, massive boom within suburbanism, within the suburban communities that have a close proximity to the urban core. And so one of our theses, when you look at our kind of 70-point due diligence protocol that we created proprietarily over the past 12 years, one of them that's been added recently that's almost started out as a joke is the $5 Uber ride. And if you're within a, $5 Uber ride, so to speak, of where all the fun stuff is, that's where people are going to want to be, because the mental toll that, people really endured during COVID, even as, the world begins to open up and people start to find a new sense of normality, they're going to want their own space. And there's always going to be a huge demographic that's going to want to be in the urban core and walkable areas where they can walk to the grocery store and live in high rises. And I don't believe that's going to change, but I think that there's a very large community, certainly, the demographic over the age of 50 that want their own space, that might have thought about being in a condo, and now they want to just kind of be, have a little bit of social distance, for lack of a better word, whether that's a 10-minute drive to downtown or not. And that's why, you're seeing some of those suburbs within Jersey really start to expand dramatically. And I don't think it's going to slow, because you can just jump on a train and be in Manhattan if you want to be in Manhattan, right? I mean, it takes you 30 minutes, 40 minutes, depending on where you are or whatever it is. And that is going to be a resurgence of what was once the American dream, so to speak, of owning your own home. And, that was the foundational point that everybody aspired to certainly in the 50s, 60s, 70s, sure. And through the mid 80s and up. And it kind of went through a declination and went down. And we're seeing a resurgence. Mark Twain said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. And we're watching that happen. And COVID was a massive accelerant to a trend that was already starting to kind of populate, same as the kind of systemic migration out of, the East and West Coast into the Sun Belt. And so, we're watching a generational population shift. We're watching a generational shift of power from the baby boomers to Gen Z into the millennials, and the largest transfer of wealth in the history of mankind to those younger generations. So by keeping our eye on what those core values are, which are starkly different than the older generation, we'll start to see what futuristic suburbanism really will be.
That's really cool. Yeah, staying ahead of the curve there. And I want to get to a point about that migration in just a second, but I will say that is comforting in a sense to hear what you said about urban areas still being a core, because I know there is a bit of a narrative over where we're at of how does New York City come back from this, as people are saying, hey, working remote is going fine for us. And it's like, well, does that spell that those gigantic office buildings might stay empty? There's some kind of scary thoughts around that of, does everybody just return to normal, or is this a new normal here of the remote working environment? So you do think that a lot of folks will be back in the cities as we know it, or knew it?
People are absolutely going to go back, are going to be going back into the urban core. I mean, there's no question about that. And so, and there will always be a demographic that wants that and craves that, needs it. But I think it's just going to take a little bit of time for people to feel a little bit more comfortable. And we're seeing, this polarizing difference between those that want to wear masks and not wear masks. And, right. So it kind of just runs that gambit in some regard. But I'm very, very confident that when we look back on this on the 10-year trend, so to speak, we'll see the urban areas really still get back to kind of peak occupancy. But with that said, with that systemic migration out of the East and West Coast, you're going to also see a large development within the suburban areas that were typically more just kind of open land that weren't meant for houses, grow as well, and begin to see a continued decline in those East and West Coast areas, because, Texas certainly is benefiting from it as much as anywhere. Florida is as well, whether it's, no state income taxes, fair climate weather, and, a confluence of other events. But that by itself is going to have a big effect.
Yeah. And you may have answered a bit of my next question, which was, you say that Texas is the future epicenter of the U.S. We now know that the whole world can fit in Texas, and that Austin could be the business capital. So why do you say that?
Well, look, you just follow the numbers. If Texas was a country, it would be the 7th largest country in the world. It just surpassed Brazil on a GDP basis. It's a fully diversified economy, and has the sustainability to truly be a country. And not to mention, it's centered basically dead center of the United States. So from a travel standpoint, you can be in New York, San Francisco, New York, Florida, Miami, wherever you want to be, in a very, very short time period. And that by itself is highly, highly attractive. The median prices of houses in California is, almost $700,000. In Texas is in the low 200s. So the ability and the cost of living, the cost of gasoline, and overall just standard of living is much higher in Texas than it is, which will allow the new inhabitants to have a pretty long runway of seeing growth, seeing equity grow in their homes, being able to work whether remotely or, working at their current positions, because you're seeing companies like Oracle move their headquarters to Austin. Tesla obviously, is building, just bought their second piece of land in Austin, but building the largest gigafactory in the world. We actually own a piece of land, right next to them that we're developing as well. So people are seeing that, and they're seeing that, the pricing is completely unsustainable in those other areas. And, we've known that for years, and we've watched this, this migration happen, and COVID just threw jet fuel on it.
It definitely did. And even one of my fellow podcasters, of course, Joe Rogan, is not shy about sharing, some of that.
No, he lives in Austin now too. He loves it.
Yeah, I know. And he talks a lot about it, and doesn't seem to be a fan anymore of California. And you got to imagine that a state like California losing so many, icons of business to Texas in particular has got to annoy them. So what does a state like California do to attract or retain the value that they do have, rather than just kick them out of their state?
I think that's a question for somebody much smarter than me, my friend.
Fair enough. Because you even see it here. I mean, I've had clients in the New York City area that are actually moving both residentially and in their business to Puerto Rico for the tax climate. And it seems like there's a bit of this kind of race to who can have a more tax-friendly environment.
Yeah,
because there's so many benefits.
Puerto Rico is highly attractive for a lot of those reasons. And, but at the end of the day, paying taxes, is how we sustain our country, and so there's a fine line between, egregious taxation versus, taxation with representation, so there's a fine line there to be discussed again by, people that are, again, smarter than me and have more insight than I do. But, paying taxes, people forget, build roads, and funds, the police to protect us, and, public hospitals. And I mean, there's so much good that comes from that. And I think people, can be a little bit narrow-minded in looking at, what they're having to pay and forgetting about all the luxuries that we have in what I believe to be the greatest country in the world. Are we perfect? No, but I don't see anybody else that has it as close to right as we do.
Yeah, I like it. I couldn't agree more. And just to kind of get near the conclusion here, I know you talk a lot about your personal wellness as a piece of your overall success. Can you share a little of kind of what a normal day is like and how you do maintain that fitness or well-being?
Normal is not a word I use very often.
Okay.
I think I try my best to be abnormal at best. But no, it comes down to the core pillars: move your body vigorously, get your heart rate up, eat, less or no sugar, eliminate processed foods, eat more vegetables, do something for your mental health. I'm actually at a transcendental meditation retreat right now in Fairfield, Iowa. And if you're doing something for your mental health, whether that's, affirmations, whether that's reading a great book, making a vision board, whatever modality that you choose to do, and eating real foods and moving your body vigorously, between those three things, which, pretty much everybody, or a vast majority of the people, certainly in the first world countries, have access to those things, thank God. You're going to be getting, talk about the 80-20 rule, you're going to be reaping at least 80% of the benefits. And just like in any fundamental truth, fundamentals is what wins championships. And those are the fundamentals. And without those, the rest is just kind of window dressing.
Got it. I like it. And if we could finish up here with a lightning round, which is one of the favorite segments for all of my listeners, in which we just ask you a few questions to get to know who you are, and you just
Sure.
give us the first thing that comes to mind. So if we can dive right into that, what would you say is your favorite book?
My favorite book. You're talking to a guy that loves books. Wow, that's almost an impossible question, but I would probably say, for the purposes of this discussion, from an entrepreneur standpoint, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Great book. What a classic. And if you had a quote to live by, what would you say your favorite quote is?
Everything you can imagine is real, Pablo Picasso.
Perfect. And a favorite movie?
Favorite movie? That's a really, really good one. I love movies. What I watched recently that really reminded me of what it means to be human and really struck me in a great way was Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump, another classic. Okay. And the last of the favorites, you travel a lot, for your business, obviously. What is your favorite vacation or your favorite destination that you've been to?
Well, I really don't do vacations, and everybody that knows me knows that.
Okay.
But I love Tulum. Tulum, which is just close to Cancun, in the south of Mexico, is a beautiful spot. And being here in Texas, it's a pretty short flight, and really special place. A lot of ancient history, and they have little pyramids, and it's just a really sacred, beautiful landscape. And my kids love it, going down to Cancun and going down to Tulum, and, seeing their joy has been really great. And it's pretty convenient to just jump down there and jump back without having to travel all the way around the world. But I've spent my life working, and I hope in the later years of my life, I'll be able to see more of the world. But for now, I got my head down and, building my dream.
I hear you. And along those lines, I know you said no day is really normal for you. How much do you typically sleep at night?
I've come to learn the value of sleep later on in life, but I certainly have that gene that every doctor has during residency, where they don't sleep for days at a time when they're focused on a project. It depends. I mean, it really, really depends. I mean, if I'm in the middle of a project, I'll stay up all night in the office working, and there'll be some days when I'm drained and I'll get in bed at 7 p.m. and, wake up at 7 a.m. the next day and sleep 12 hours, right? You have to pay back that sleep debt. But I try to get a solid 6 to 7 hours a night, because I find after that, anything less than that really plummets productivity.
Got it. Got it. And a couple here, it doesn't need to be monetary, but we'll finish with, can you point to anything you would say was your best investment that you made?
Yeah, my health.
Your health. Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Focusing on my health with the same tenacity, focus, as I have with my business, and treated myself as the business. And there was no question that is the best investment I've ever made.
Awesome. Yep. Your body is your temple. And conversely, what would be the worst investment?
The worst investment, it's a tough question, because, in our failures or worst investments or whatever the things we find to be worse, there's something to be learned, right? I mean, so I don't just see the world through those eyes when things are going wrong, to the public eye, or even to my own thought process in the moment. I find that as time goes by, those things that were seemingly blunders were actually blessings in disguise. So I just don't really ascribe to that line of questioning.
Okay. I like it. That's fair. And so, I mean, this has been a great conversation. I know you're a busy guy. Anything that you'd like to leave off with, or that you want to make sure our listeners know about you?
No, I mean, if I'm pretty easy to find. They can Google my name, or Google Rastegar property, or just Google Ari Rastegar, and they can find us online or on Instagram at Rastegar, or on our website. And if there's any questions they have or any thoughts they have, they can feel free to reach out. And if I can help, I will.
Awesome. And then the final bonus here, everybody knows Austin is on the map. You are at the epicenter right now. What would you say, in your humble opinion, is the next Austin?
That is a great question. I'll tell you, I love Raleigh, North Carolina.
Raleigh, North Carolina. Okay. Okay, good.
Love Raleigh, and I love me some Nashville. Nashville and Raleigh, to me, are the two cities that I love most, kind of second and third, not necessarily in that order, to Austin.
Okay. Yeah, Nashville definitely booming as well, but Raleigh, that's a good one to keep in mind. I haven't heard that.
Raleigh's a spectacular city, and I assure you'll be reading more about it as the years to come.
Perfect. Well, Ari, thank you. You've been an awesome guest. I really appreciate the time today.
Thanks so much. Talk to you a bit. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Caderna podcast. We've just listened to Ari Rastegar, a great interview here. Please keep tuning in, and we will see you next week. This podcast is intended for the general public and for informational purposes only. The show does not provide any recommendations or investment advice regarding any specific account type, service, strategy, or product, or to otherwise act in any fiduciary or other capacity. Please contact a financial professional for guidance and information that is specific to your situation. Brian Caderna does not provide tax or legal advice. Please contact your accountant or legal advisor to discuss your situation. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by Park Avenue Securities, Guardian, or Caderna Financial Team, and opinions stated are their own. All investments contain risk and may lose value. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. References to specific securities, asset classes, and financial markets are for illustrative purposes only and do not constitute a solicitation, offer, or recommendation to purchase or sell a security. Brian Caderna is a registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, PAS. OSJ 300 Broadacres Drive, Suite 175, Bloomfield, New Jersey, 07003. Phone number 973-244-4420. Securities products and advisory services offered through PAS, member FINRA SIPC. Financial representative of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. PAS is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Caderna Financial Team is not an affiliate or subsidiary of PAS or Guardian. California Insurance License Number 0K04194.